Hi, my name is Christina Blanche, and I am a comic book educator, comic scholar. I taught a course called the Super MOOC on gender through comic books, and then one on social issues through comic books. I also write The Damnation of Charlie Wormwood, and I own a comic store in Muncie, Indiana, Oh Yeah Comics. Oh yeah! Yay! And we have a couple other stores in Skokie, Illinois, and Harrison, New York.
Great, next slide.
Oh, it is me.
Jackie Crofts.
I'm Jackie Crofts. I'm the illustrator for a comic called Nutmeg, and I'm feeling really good about this panel because the room's like 1/3 people that I actually know. So. It's not too. Oh.
Is it weird, is it, guys?
No, it's not awesome.
Yeah, I'm Brooke. I draw a comic called Lumberjanes. Not a man, but yeah.
My name's Ginger D. I draw comics called Brothers Grant, Dexter's Sticks, and Presidents of the United States.
Hi, I'm Bri Rudd. I make a webcomic called Oh No Bri, and I write for Geeking in Indiana and with Panelist, where I write about comic books.
Do this part.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Schenkel. I write about comics. I have written for the Mary Sue, if you have any Mary Sue people. And I also write for Panelist.net, and recently, the most recent thing I've written for was actually Playboy, so that happened. Yeah, that's me.
They've actually been having a lot of progressive articles in there,
Yeah.
more than a lot of other magazines where you would think of.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just recently started featuring cosplay.
Yeah.
And I came across one of my pictures in Playboy on the website. That was interesting.
Oh, and I forgot to plug my actual personal project. I also am the host, I should really do that. I'm also the host of Driving Home the Movie, which is a web series about movies.
Great. My name is Taverja. I am the author of Viscountess and Countess. It's a science fiction fantasy trilogy. I am also a writer for Exo Jane. My most recent article is I recovered from my abusive past by becoming a real-life superhero. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the real-life superhero movement, but I was involved in that, and I dressed up head to toe in a costume and passed out food to the homeless on the streets of Chicago. I do other things too, but I can't really see what I do, and I have a terrible memory. Oh yeah, thank you, yes. I also participated in the Comic Creators for Freedom project, where we, all the proceeds that we had raised went toward Love 146, which is an organization that helps with ending human trafficking. Okay. Great, so we will begin. A Forced Diversity is the name of this part of our panel. Yeah. So the topic of discussion is where the heck would we find a picture of an all-male team in merchandising and other forms of media? Because it seems as though it's very female-dominated. So I would like to ask my panelists at this time, what are your thoughts on this? Anyone?
Well, we talk about lumberjanes here. I mean,
I'm part of the problem.
yeah. Do you think you could possibly take, put a man in there or a male? Because, I mean, it's very female-driven. It might give men, like, some problems. I mean, they might be scared to go into a comic book shop to get your book.
I see your points. However, I don't know if I could I can't get into that. Why it just doesn't seem believable to me to see a man character, just doing things that a woman character would do, walking around in the woods, camping, stuff like that.
There is a disparity.
Yeah, how would they? I don't see it. It doesn't seem realistic in my very realistic world that I draw. So, I mean, I understand your points, to be fair, but my points, I think, are more valid.
I was gonna say, because I don't know if anybody is a fan of the new Black Canary book. I actually really love that book. But they were very good about making sure to put in a token guy onto that team. Now granted, it is still an entirely female-led book, a band that is with all women, but they made sure to have the token dude manager character, which I thought was really important for representation.
Yeah, that's representation.
And in A-Force, they managed to get one male,
Yeah.
which, you know, I'm not sure, I mean, Namor, but,
Yeah.
spoilers.
It's nice, you know, people, and you have the boyfriend at home, and I feel like, you know, we're giving you this, like, take it, you know, he's there, he's probably like, you know, fixing shelves or something, and what do you guys want from us?
Speaking of which, like, I'd like to address the fact that, you know, aren't white, straight, cis males, like, isn't that, like, a really specific, like, demographic? I mean, shouldn't we be worried that pandering to men will alienate everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, most of the white straight males are in Congress, so, you know.
Unfortunately, this isn't parody.
I do feel as if for the very few men out there that are both white, straight, and cis, of course, they really do need some representation because they don't see themselves in any forms of media. So when comics can be the thing that bridges them and lets them see themselves in comics, I do think that there's something really beautiful about that.
But do we need that? I mean, isn't that pandering?
Because when you think about it, I mean, like the fact that women are portrayed in such a way, I mean, but then you have men, it sort of panders to, like, male power, what is it? What was the word I'm looking for? Power fantasy. Ooh, I feel dirty now.
I will say that there was a lot of controversy last year because while this is not the first time that we've had a male Thor, Thor did become, there was a man that was in the Thor role. And I had someone recently tell me that, like, well, once Marvel said that they were specifically looking for male readers, that this person just assumed that it was pandering, which I find really interesting because if it's any other demographic, suddenly it's not pandering if they specifically say that they're looking for a particular market.
Yeah, I think they need to just make it a female because, I mean, the sales were really bad when it was a male. So,
Yeah.
you know, male comics just don't sell.
Yeah,
So,
and on that note, like, toy stores are overflowing with unsold Iron Man and Captain America merchandise,
yeah.
but there's no Black Widow. So clearly she's selling faster than they can stock her. Are men a viable market?
No is the answer.
I'm just not sure because we go to the stores and you can't find any of the female characters there. They just fly off the shelves. So maybe they're just making too many male toys.
I mean, clearly they're underpriced is what I'm thinking for them to just be flying off the shelves like that.
Yeah, clearly the boys just aren't ready to commit like the women are to like really diving into the fandom. So, you know, they'll just let their stuff sit on the shelves.
Hey,
We'll grab ours.
boys. Okay, so the typical portrayal of a man is either angry or really, really angry. So I would like to know why can't they just cry and fall in love with, like women do? And how can and have comics explore traits that are gendered, you know, male or female? Like, what are your takes on this, being in the positions you are?
I would say that in my comic, Brothers Grant, I try really hard to address this because, like, I have men in this comic that are able to cry and be depressed, and if offends a lot of people. So they're like, that's not male. They can't do that. And I feel like I'm trying really hard to bring light to the situation.
Well, yeah,
It's not just things that women do.
You created the Brothers Grant in part to show emotional vulnerability in your works. So, like with your male characters, and could you extrapolate a little bit on that?
You asked it a different way.
I'm sorry. What would be the stereotypically stoic hero, like women with their shit together? Like what does that mean?
Well, usually it means that they're totally crying all the time because they're so in touch with themselves.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
So obviously, and since the writer of Nutmeg, who is in the audience here, James, he is a man.
Yeah, stand up.
Good job.
We like to encourage men
Yeah.
in comics.
Yeah.
Because while we can't
He's doing
find them
such a
very
good job.
often, because we can't find them very often, when we do see them, we really want to give them a pat on the back and tell them, good job.
Thank you for being a
Good
man.
for you.
And he's doing such a good job at writing 13-year-old girls in this comic. You know, he's not making them angry all the time. You know, because from his male perspective, he probably doesn't know how to write women in any other way. So he's just like putting those. He's doing a good job not getting those male traits in there and making them all angry and tough.
We did think to put you on the panel, but we figured we had it covered and we kind of know what men.
Too many.
Yeah.
We've written men, so we pretty much know everything there is to know about them.
I did once read a Stan Lee bio, so I feel like I'm pretty confident I understand men in comics.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to move on. Christine, this question is directed for you, actually. Gender has a spectrum of characterization in comics. Where do a gender-fluid or non-binary characters like Loki, Mystique, or Dr. Fate fit into the discussion of men or masculinity in comics? That's my husband.
This is our token male on the panel.
Isn't it just like a male, am I right?
Always wants to grab the attention. I'm going to answer this in a roundabout way, because that's how I talk. In my class that we did on gender through comic books, we read a lot of, gender is different than sex, just so everybody knows. Gender is how you feel inside, whether you feel masculine or feminine or androgynous, whatever those mean to you. So I had all of our students and our writers, we had a lot of writers in there. We had Mark Wade, we had Scott Snyder, James Tynan, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Devin Grayson. And so I had them take a test called the BEM sex test. It was from the 1970s. And what it did is you took the test, you answered questions from 1 to 7, and whether these traits were for you masculine or feminine, how you feel about this, like having kids. You know, do you like kids? Yes, I like them very much at 7, or yeah, only for breakfast. But instead of taking it for us, we took it for the characters that we were reading. So we did it for Batman, and we did it for we did it for all the other characters. We did Bruce Wayne, and we did Batman, and we did Superman, and we did Wonder Woman, and Captain Marvel. And so what was great, though, was, Batman came out as very masculine. Bruce Wayne was a little masculine. Superman was feminine, and Wonder Woman was masculine. And Kelly Sue was the funniest because she took it for Captain Marvel. She said she took it 3 times, trying to change her answers, because Captain Marvel kept coming through as masculine, and she really wanted her to not be, that high on the masculine trait. So it just shows that, we have this problem that, now I'm getting into my teacher voice, sorry. We have this problem about, what is masculine and what is feminine. So, for the men out there that are really trying, for those of us trying to write about men and include men in our comics, we have to really think about, what we think of as masculine, because every male in this room is going to be different, and different levels of how, they would rate masculine and feminine.
And on that note, actually, this next question I'd like to direct at both Katie and Bri. There's a ton of all ages comics out there, like Lumberjanes, Bee and Puppycat, Gem, and Miss Marvel, but most of them appear to be aimed at girls. That's super unfair, you guys. So I would like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to realize that it is literally impossible to give a young boy a comic that has a girl lead because it just disappears into vapor. So never, ever try and let your kid, who happens to be a boy, read something like, say, Helpless Great Warrior just because it's an awesome adventure comic because there's a girl in it. So we've got to make sure that we avoid that. And, you know, there's no representation for young boys in comics. It's not really been traditionally something we thought as being for them. So you have to watch out for that. You know, you don't want to let them think that anyone can go on an adventure and they can relate to people who don't look like them. That's not a thing you want to build in someone that young.
You were him. Oh, it was.
You guys, we can't, the dude can't talk.
I'm his voice, okay? Are we taking a selfie right now? I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kind of lost my train of thought. I was gonna say in my defense, I do draw a few, we have the scouting lads, you know, they're, I mean, yes, it's an answer to the women in the comic, but, I mean, you know, they're there.
What are words happening over here?
But isn't that just taking a female character and making a male version of her? I mean, that's not right.
What do you want from me? I can't possibly think like a man. I am obviously very feminine and a woman. So I don't know. I'm doing the best I can. Right? That's all I have to do.
I'm going to answer with a slightly serious question, or answer, so sorry. But I will say that the great thing about kids comics, or all ages comics, because I read them too and I'm almost 30, is that the ones that have female leads in it have a really good following with boys. I adore Gotham Academy so much, and yes, they're all men characters, but we can all agree that Max is the best character in that whole book, and she happens to be a young girl. Who, by the way, though, speaking about gender and stuff, there have been people wondering what's going to go on with her as she gets older, because she does have a lot of masculine traits as well. But as far as how the great thing that I'm seeing lately, because granted this isn't comics, but I've seen a ton of Steven Universe cosplay coming up, is that there are a lot of feminine characters that little boys are relating to, which I am very happy about, because I think that the idea that little boys can't like girl things is something that's maybe slowly dissipating, at least for the really young ones, so I'm happy about that.
And since you're being serious right now,
Sorry, I put us on that road.
that's okay. Put down the pillow. So there's a book out there called Terrible Lizard by Colin Bunn. And it is awesome. I love it. So it is all ages. So it's about a little girl and her dinosaur. And I was so happy on Free Comic Book Day that that's one of the books they chose, and I ordered a gazillion of them. And every time a kid comes in, I don't care what gender they are, what sex they are, it doesn't matter. I give that to them, and they always come back to get it because it is a story. And we are the ones who put the pressure on kids to be one way or the other. Kids just want to be kids. They'll read a story. They don't care if it's about a boy or a girl. They just want to read a good story. And that's what we need to remember. And I'll get off my serious stand.
Speaking of, okay, I'm glad that you got off your serious box, because we are now going to talk about Dick. So, this is my question to the panel. Sometimes men like it when you look at their butts. Censoring art of Dick's butt or Namor's nipples is kink shaming, butt shaming even, and that's not cool. I don't actually have a question. Now,
Can I just say, God bless the Grayson team, because they know what audience they have, and it is so much female gaze is in that book, and I just read an interview with the artist where he was asked whether he preferred Dick Grayson's abs or his butt, and he was like, no, butt.
I appreciate that the heads are cut off right now. I just feel like it's a
We don't really need them.
Well,
It's
but
focusing on what we
you
want.
have to think about men, and how are they gonna feel reading that book? And they're gonna be intimidated to think that's how they have to be. They have to be that strong, they have to look like that, to get any attention whatsoever, and to make it in the world.
They
Christine-
look like that Rob Liefeld Captain American drawing.
Oh man, you're having a
If you look like that, or know anyone that looks like that, go to the doctor.
I think it's important to realize that when these men are, in the middle of a story and instead of participating in the action, they're sort of framed for the viewer to stare at, I think they feel empowered. Like, oh, I don't need to matter to the action. I can just be something for people to just stare at. I think we need to give them the chance to feel good about themselves that way. That's how they get their value.
I agree, and
There's so few characters that they can really, look at. There's so few males in comics that, do we really have to put Grayson out there like that?
And that's what I want to direct this next question to, actually, you, Christine, and Jackie as well, if she will take it. On the subject of heroic body types, women tend to be portrayed in only a couple of ways. The best ways.
Strippers.
So, like I said, the best ways. Men, on the other hand, they can be fat, they can be large, skinny, or old. And I'm wondering, should we be worried about the negative ways in which a young boy's body image will be impacted? Because they don't have a clear path to health and perfection, like women do.
Well, it's really confusing if you can just look like anything. That's like a blank slate. You have so many different ways that you can be. What do you choose?
Yeah, it's hard I think it's hard for men to choose because they have so many options out there, especially, in the comics. You could look like Kingpin, you could look like Penguin, you could look like Joker, you could
Don, Phil's father.
Yeah, there's so many options out there. But for women, we have a very clear-cut, easy path because as long as we look like, is anybody under? Yes. As long as we look like people who perform for money.
That's a little bit slut-shamey.
then it's okay. So we really don't, we can wake up in the morning and know exactly what to wear.
I can look like this.
Yeah. So I think it's... If you try and you're not twisted enough.
Actually, that kind of hurt.
How many chiropractors in the audience?
That's the thing, all women need are to lose a few organs, and then suddenly we got the right proportions.
And we don't need all those organs. Let's be honest.
Who needs a kidney? Who really needs a kidney?
You got two for a reason.
Yeah.
Take the gallbladders out. You can take half a liver. We only really need one lung. Come on.
But men need
Yeah.
they have health issues,
Yes.
what if I don't know, many
Well,
of their,
they're delicate.
there's too many organs. You have to make sure you get all that anatomy right.
Do you think that impacts the perception of men? Where's the love for the dad bod? That's the thing that recently came out into the mainstream, right?
I would take Chris Pratt, dad bod or bod now though. I'm just saying. Sorry. No, but it isn't. We really need to have all those choices for men. But maybe we should probably be a little bit more lenient with the men and kind of give them just one way to look, I think.
make them as feminine as possible. It's a hard word to say. They all make cookies and stuff. They're pretty normal, honestly. Normal being feminine, of course. Well, of course.
Well, what do you think, Jackie? Actually, I would like to ask you, direct this question at you. It was what we were talking about over lunch about the perceptions of the portrayal of men in comics and how they correlate with women. Like, do you have any commentary?
Yeah, this question is actually great. I got this, I was looking at the questions like a few days ago, and it was like, hey, you've submitted a lot of character portfolios for places. What do they ask for with body types? And I was like, never submitted a character portfolio before, so I don't know. But as far as just like different body types, okay, I'm sorry, I go super serious like right away. But
And you put the pillow down.
yeah.
This is how we know. There it is.
It's really hard with the flipping thing. But I feel like it's really important to get all these different body types and just have good representation of everybody. I mean, I don't want to like name any names, but so at my actual job, we have a lot of problems with like, not problems, but there's a lot of like forced diversity and stuff like that. So I kind of come into contact through it with that, and it's not so much body types, but it is kind of like an odd thing where they're trying to be like so diverse that you're almost being like sexist or racist, and it's like, what's happening here? But you can't really like say anything. So,
I'm also a graphic designer, and I used to work for toy and game companies, and I would be commissioned to create artwork for game packages. And the thing that, this is also serious, but the thing that would happen pretty often is that I would be asked to put diversity into package designs, but I could never have, say, like a black or an Asian person at the center of the photo, because it had to be a white person. And I brought this up because I'm Asian American. I brought this up, and they said, well, we want all of our customers to be able to envision themselves at that person at the center, and this isn't for you.
oh, wow.
Is anyone in here a fan of like anime or Japanese popular culture? So I don't know if you guys are, okay, so basically everyone, basically. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the GAR stereotype, G-A-R. It's essentially something that's new, or rather in mainstream Japanese culture, where they're focused on like the hyper-masculine, like male-bodied hero. And following that line of thought, I'm wondering, I think we should talk about the gender-fluid Loki and the erasure of strong male character archetypes, because while this is prevailing in Japan, while this is prevailing in Japan, clearly we need a little bit more help. So does anyone have any commentary in that regard?
I'd like to point out, because I don't know if anybody knows Marcy Cook's writing. We both know her, and she's a delight. Oh yeah, hi. But she wrote about A-Force, and she was explaining how, because Loki is female in A-Force, and she was explaining how his identity changes, and at one point he was a unicorn. So obviously Loki is one of those interesting cases where he or she, whenever, kind of chooses to be whoever they want to be.
And as a retailer, putting on my retailer hat, Loki sells like gangbusters. It doesn't matter whether Loki is female, male, in between, a unicorn, Loki's going to sell. Because if you write a good character, that's the important thing. Oh, that's serious. Sorry, I slipped right into that serious thing.
I mean, I can get behind that, like, but on the other hand, can anyone in this room name any female superheroes who are like middle-aged or older?
the wall, the twig.
My perception of the DC universe will always go back to the DCAU. So my bitch of Amanda Waller is the amazing, awesome design that the DCAU gave her. And I just reject everything else. As it should be.
Speaking of which, okay, well, I keep doing that, point after point. Do we have another slide, or are we through? No, okay. Well, we have a lot more time than we initially anticipated if we wanted to open the floor to questions. I know that we were concerned before about how into it we were going to get. What do you guys feel?
Sure. Yeah. Ladies, let the men have turns too, okay?
So, this is going back to your last talking point of male body image in comics. And one thing I noticed is that, for female readers, you've got all these examples of these beautiful heroines with impossibly long flowing hair that never gets in the way, lots of perfect figures, and they're showing lots of skin and whatnot. But I feel like all the men in comics, maybe except for a handful of token side characters like Nightwing, they're all really ugly, right? They're all these grotesque bodybuilders who are just made of upside down triangles, and they're wearing some ridiculous spandex body condoms with their underwear on the outside that doesn't show any skin, and they're wearing these stupid masks that cover their whole head, like Batman and the Flash. So when are we going to start seeing representations of attractive men in comics? As an attractive man, I identify better with attractive male characters, but I can't find it in comics.
This is why I appreciate the Thor movies, because not only did they give us some really glorious Chris Hemsworth shots, but they've also made his hair more luxurious and long. So to the point where I've seen fan art for the third one, it'll just be flowing out the door. It'll be like Adventure Time Finn, just flowing.
Medusa.
Yeah, the hair is one of the biggest problems, because I don't know if you've noticed, everyone in the DC universe has the same stupid 1950s Mad Men haircut. Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, Hal Jordan, Arthur Curry, they're all just Fred from Scooby-Doo.
Are there any other comments or questions? Yes. Speak a little bit louder. Did anyone?
Does an invisible woman become a middle-aged hero?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, the invisible woman does count, and mind you, her power is to become invisible. And she only became the invisible woman after she was married, after a few years and had a kid. Then she became the invisible woman. Before that, she was the invisible girl.
Yes.
Keep the pillow up. You said you work with Playboy, right? You understand what it's like to have women who've been represented with success and power. Well, men don't get that in this society. We don't have magazines that show off men can be, successful and attractive. It's always oh, you can see this, man who's successful or attractive. Why is there no images of men that have well-endowed pecs and finely toned thighs in business suits?
God, I know. I have an answer for Thor movies.
I have an answer for this. Why don't you just make your own? If you really want, just put yourself out there. I don't understand why, to be quite honest, because we haven't gotten to this point. If men really want to be in comics, then just make your own comics. And then we'll say you're pandering. Thank you for your question.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to shift this to a serious note, but you were talking earlier about Loki being gender fluid, gender queer in that spectrum. And I really love that you touched on non-binary comic book characters. But I was wondering how you felt about the representation of trans men and women in
That's a great question. I personally would love to see a lot more of that, because when we think of trans individuals in the sphere of the mainstream, it confuses a lot of people, I think. With this whole thing happening where Caitlyn Jenner came out, for instance, she is now the most famous transgendered individual in mainstream society. But I mean, if you'll notice, also she's a rich white lady now. So I would love to see transgendered individuals who are represented by a whole bunch of other demographics too. Does anyone else in the panel have
You want to go first?
something to add along those
I was
lines?
gonna say, yeah, there's a lot of independently created stuff that'll have better representation and stuff by trans creators. But I think that there needs to be a lot more in the mainstream because one, everyone deserves to see themselves reflected in the culture that's put out broadly. You shouldn't have to go and hunt to find yourself because you're a person. And two, if you're not hunting for those things, then it's not something that you become aware of and gain an understanding of, and it's also important to see other types of people represented so you understand that the world is maybe broader than you've been raised to think of it as being. So I think there's starting to be more, and there's some awesome trans creators who are making stuff. The first one that comes to mind, because I love everything she draws, is Sophie Campbell, who is on Gem and the Holograms, but more is always better.
And I will say, again, I'm cis, just to be clear, so I'm only speaking as someone who tries to be an ally for trans people, but I'm obviously as flawed as an ally is. I feel like, especially in sci-fi / superhero books, there's a tendency to fantasize trans and gender fluid people, which is slightly a problem when they become magical, and that's why they're gender fluid. So for me, as far as, because I would like to go into creating things down the line, as someone outside that realm, I feel like creators really need to be better about listening to the trans community and listening to the kinds of representation that works for them, because sometimes it goes far into, like I said, into the sci-fi thing where it becomes their gimmick instead of just part of who they are. So that's where, when talking about it, that's where I'm thinking where we need to go next in comics.
And here's the thing that people really need to understand about pop culture, creators especially, is that it has a huge impact on the people that read it. Whether the people reading it know it or not, it has a huge impact on them. Just look at the last 10, 15 years and the shows that have had gay, lesbian, characters in them. Kids today, they don't have the same, things are changing. Look what the the Supreme Court just did. Woo! But kids are changing and they don't see things the same way, because if they read about these, all different types of people, they're going to be more accepting of all these types of people. You don't have to teach them that. They will read that and they will absorb that and learn that. And that's really important for creators to realize.
I think comics especially are such a good way to gauge, I guess, kind of the fluctuations of society, because when you look at it, it's like, if we look at comics, it's very clear that within American society, at least, when we think about what is feminine or what is masculine, rather than being two separate sides of the same coin, masculinity is considered to be superior to femininity.
And standard.
Yes, and I also think that can be attributed to the fact that trans women of color are the most violently marginalized demographic within our society. So I think it's important that we especially raise them up, if only through our creations, if only in comics and media, because I think only then will we see true change if they are represented, if there's this stigma associated with that taken away.
And comics are cultural mirrors. If you look at comics throughout the ages, you can see what is going on, because they come out every month. It's not a novel that people are writing, or it comes out 2, 3, 4 years later. What the creators are thinking, whether they mean, again, to put it in or not, it's in there. So, and the creators, if you follow some of them on Twitter, they're very political and they're into what's going on. So again, that's a responsibility.
And I'm a really, I was an English major in college, so like a lot of my background is really in the analyzing of literature and media. And I'm just a really big believer in diversity in media, specifically because it does change your worldview. And for not just for young kids, but for even adults, I really believe that in the power of storytelling as far as changing people's perceptions of other people and having empathy. And so for me, not just in gender issues, not just in gender orientation, but also in racial issues and other, like all the other forms of diversity, I just feel like I want to support the creators who create a more diverse world and help bring empathy to more readers.
Question?
I had a question for Ginger and for Jackie. And one of the, so you worked in marketing and design and also design for toys. And I'm wondering what did they consider a gendered appeal, especially for like toys, and then did that same type of gendered appeal, did that go like to decide how we're going to market to boys, how we're going to market to girls, did that translate to adults as well? The same kind of design choices?
The short answer for that would be yes. I actually prepared an answer for that question earlier. Generally, what would happen in the toy industry is that I would be assigned pink and pastel, or pink, purple, any sort of pastel. That would be for girls, and then everything else would be considered boys, and possibly both genders. But it was never really explicitly stated because it was kind of like boys were the default in that. And so, in the way things were marketed to adults, like it was still pink and purple. So we did like a bunch of dice games because they found that that was marketable to women. That it would still be pink and purple just for women, and then everything else was default boy.
I haven't actually done a lot of toy design, but I did do a lot of game stuff before I was writing or drawing Nutmeg. And as far as like video games go, I think that it kind of has the same struggle that comics do, as in like not great representation for women in games. And I think we still have those like body issue things that have problems where it's like that's the reason a lot of women might not want to get into games or might like shy away from it because I mean we've been having so many problems with like people attacking women and just on Twitter and
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know.
Are we absolutely sure it's not about ethics? just throwing that out there.
We don't want those people after us.
Yeah, I know. There was a small period of time where it's like I just can't follow any of this anymore. Like I love video games, but I can't look at it because I'm just like disgusted by all of it.
Yeah, one of my problems is the people that I hang around, all the men, they'll play as women. They don't care. It's not a big deal for them. So I have no Gamergate people in my life. I said the G word. Sorry. But they're like totally the opposite. So it's really hard for me to grasp how anyone would think that way.
I really feel like marketing people, the corporations that do the big mainstream comics, and it's changed, it always is changing, and I don't, like, it just depends on who it is, but I think a lot of times marketers underestimate what men can handle as far as how they feel, because I have a lot of male friends. I was going to pull this out earlier, like, I have plenty of male friends, but I have a lot of them who are just as confused and bewildered when they see like the weird video game marketing where it looks like a bad comic book drawing. They're as confused as we all are on certain comic book artists who draw women as like stick figures. I feel like men truly are underestimated as far as how much they can handle women being heroes, women being in their spaces.
I've got a story for you, actually. It's short, I promise. So, as I said before when we began this panel, I suited up as a superhero because I felt very inspired by these superheroes in comics. I grew up with comics all my life. So I was actually among those who caught the attention of certain people in the media and was asked to do a convention. I believe it was ChicagoCon, Wizard World, and I spoke on a panel dressed up head to toe in costume. No one knew my secret identity, except, until recently when I came out and said I did this thing. And there were several other men on the panel. I was the only woman, and I was really excited. I was at the end of the table over there waiting for my question to come up because they were talking about all of the cool gadgets that people used on street patrols. They were talking about, the most exciting experience, and then it got to me, and I was asked the woman question, where, what's it like? Do you feel like you're at a disadvantage being out in the streets, helping the homeless in Chicago because, of your physical stature, being a woman? More or less, that was the question. So I get it, I feel like if we had more representation, if we had people who didn't have, just like what you said before, like the stick figure female archetype, then maybe there would be more people willing to go out and do things in their societies, willing to go out and kind of change things,
Yeah, and I know we're still on the serious, real world thing, but one of the things I did like about A-Force, as much crap as they got from the news of it, it really shows how many female characters they have at Marvel.
Yeah.
Now, they don't always use them, they don't always have them in rotation, but when you have a comic with that big of a poster with all those people.
Do we have any readers in here, by the way? Yeah? Cool.
But yeah, I feel like they just need to get more page time, and they need to get more exposure to the people who don't go into the comic book stores every Wednesday.
Are there any more questions? No?
It's about this whole time you even mentioned Why the Last Man, which is literally an all-female comics limited series one with only one guy who's just a dork, and I don't think any man reading it, and certainly I didn't feel like I wanted to be Dora Brown in that comic. So, does anyone have any thoughts on that, or how it could, or kind of creative projects like that could go around, if that helps at all?
The kind of dork superheroes that we were talking about?
Yeah, no, I mean dork male hero.
Yeah.
Dork male characters.
I think it's kick-ass when you
Why
see
the
them in
Last
chat.
Man is a gender textbook, and if you haven't read it, you need to today go to your local comic book store and get this book. Just buy all 10 volumes or all 5 volumes. Why the Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan. It is amazing, and you will thank us for this because it is amazing. And then pick up Saga because it's really cool too. I get no money for either one of those suggestions.
You go buy it from Aya Comics.
Yes, but buy it from Aya Comics. If you're in Indiana, or if you're in Indianapolis, go to Downtown Comics.
That's your comic shop, right?
My comic shop is Aya, downtown's in
I was
Indianapolis.
gonna say, Bri and I really short story. We actually were writing for the same website, but we actually met each other through Downtown Comics, so the manager thought that we would be really good friends, and then we ended up becoming really good friends.
So what we could do now, actually, since we are out of material and it was 2:50, we have excess time. If anyone would like to exchange contact details with us while we're still here, unless anyone else has anything.
I just was saying I have to head out because I have to go get my picture with Sam Jones.
That's a shame. Okay, so let's get pictures and hang out and trade details.